All right, next up we have EQ. And again, FabFilter Pro Q is, for me, the most powerful EQ plugin you can use. The flexibility on this thing is ridiculous. So much you can do with it. It sounds beautiful, and it's extremely, extremely flexible and pretty easy to use as well. So very quickly, you have a little bit of controls here. So there's zero latency, natural phase, and linear phase. I tend to use natural phase. To me, it sounds the most transparent, and it gives me that peace of mind where it reduces the latency. So whatever change that I'm doing, I can hear instantly. With linear phase, there's a lag, and I don't hear what I'm doing right away. So I always like to keep it a natural phase. That's completely up to you if in the end you want to switch it to linear phase in the end. The difference is linear phase is great when you're doing really broad EQ boosts and cuts. If you're doing more surgical work, you might want to use zero latency or natural phase. So again, that's why I leave it at natural phase. It's a good balance between the two. And then I'm going to switch this mode to mid-side. I'm going to keep the analyzer as it is. Actually, I'm going to check and see. Yeah, okay, so I want the resolution to be on maximum, and I want the speed to be slow so I can see what's going on and really hone in on any problem frequencies. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do with this EQ is I'm going to use mid-side EQing to EQ out any mud on the sides, and then EQ out the very, very bottom end from the mids if we need to, and then create some separation between the mids and the sides by boosting the top end on the sides and maybe reducing it in the mids. So all of this is to, again, check problem frequencies, balance the overall frequency spectrum, and just make everything sound like it works together, like everything belongs. So again, always have span. Even though this has a built-in analyzer, it's always good to get more than one point of view when you're listening. All right, so I'm going to go to, again, the loudest section. And I'm going to go through EQing this, and then I'll explain a little bit what I did after I'm done. Okay, so with all this EQing, I'm only EQing the mids so far. So I'm hunting for frequencies that are maybe annoying to my ear, that are muddy in this case, that are harsh or honky in this case here. And there was a little annoying frequency in the kick that was kind of boxy right there. So all of these cuts are in the mids. And here I also tamed the very top end. So I got rid of that harshness in the upper percussion and things that were kind of fatiguing my ear. And again, all of these are only on the mids. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the side now. And then after I'm done with the sides, in the end, we will decide if these cuts and boosts will apply only to the mids or only to the sides or to both the stereo. So the mids and the sides. So one thing that I might not have explained here let me just get rid of that. If you go to the controls here, this is obviously the output level, and then this ring is what determines what you're listening to. Take it all the way to the left and you're only listening to the mids. Take it all the way to the right and you're only listening to the sides. And then here you have auto makeup gain, which is pretty useful. You have phase inversion here, and then you can power the plugin on and off. So let's switch to the sides, and I'm going to keep the sides pretty simple. I'm going to EQ out the bottom end and maybe warm it up in the places where we made cuts in the mids, maybe if we need to. Okay, so with the sides, I've cut out a lot of the bottom end just to make sure. Now, we did already make the bottom end mono using the Pro MB, but there still might be some information down there that we want to get rid of that will take up our headroom that we want to remove. So low cut on the sides, and by the way, this is where you select which part you're working on. So the S is the sides, M is the mids. This is both mid and side, so stereo. So this cut is on the side only. And then when I swept the EQ down in these same sections here, I found out that also cutting those gets rid of muddiness in the sides. Therefore, I'm going to switch these two cuts to stereo. This boost, I'm also going to test out and see. I made a little cut there on the sides. It was kind of harsh up there. It was a little too crispy, too sparkly up here, so I made a little cut. And then I boosted the top right almost at the same point where I cut from the mids. So let's take a listen to everything overall, the mids and the sides, and then we can decide what we want to do with maybe this boost. Maybe we want to increase these cuts a little bit more. We can find out when we listen. Okay, so switch this boost to stereo as well. Kept this cut the same on the sides, and these boosts are really nice as well. So we've created some top end separation between the mids and the sides, and that's great. So let's turn the plugin on and then off, and then compare. And we can do that from right here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to volume match to make sure that we're at the same level and that we're not fooling ourselves into believing that everything sounds better because it's louder. And also always keep in mind that we do still have a limiter on here. So just keep that in mind. And we're going to check to see that the limiter isn't actually doing any gain reduction. And that's why I have the limiter outside of the plugin group. So we can compare before and after with the limiter on and have a more objective view of the changes that we made. Okay, so let's compare before and after the EQ for now. All right, so it sounds a lot more balanced, doesn't sound as harsh. These resonant frequencies here, the fact that we cut them really cleaned up the mix a little bit. This boost is a little bit too loud. It's at 2.23. I'm going to just turn it down to 2. And yes, that 0.2 does make a difference, especially in this frequency range where your ears are most sensitive. So be careful when boosting in this area here, because even 0.2 dB of a boost makes a difference in terms of harshness. Now, I think I actually also want to add a little bit of warmth in this section here somewhere. So I'm going to sweep around and find a sweet spot and boost it just a little bit because I still feel that maybe the bottom end is missing something. Okay, so I like that. It adds richness and thickness to the bottom end. So just a 2 dB boost at 147 hertz. So I was looking for that kind of roar in the bottom end, that growl in the bottom end, and I found it at this frequency, boosted it a little bit. Okay, and now let's volume match. And the way I'm going to do that is on Voxengo span here. First of all, I want to put it before the limiter so that the limiter is not affecting the RMS and peak reading. So what I want to do is I want to compare the RMS before and after all these plugins. Of course, you can do this by ear and just go to the output of the EQ and turn it down if you need to, or turn it up if you need to. But if you want to get more scientific about it, you can use the RMS. Make note of it, then turn the plugins off, make note of that, and then I'm going to use the output of the EQ to adjust. Okay, so with all these plugins on, we are about 4 dB higher and 4 dB down. And now we should be pretty much at the same loudness. Let's check and make sure. So plugins on first, and then I'm going to turn off. And now we can actually compare objectively if what we did makes the song sound better. Right, so we've cleaned up this mix quite a lot. It sounds so much more balanced. All these frequencies that were jumping out at us before are not anymore. Maybe we can just not cut this quite as much, because we lost a little bit of that attitude in the synths. So it's about a 4 dB cut there. I'm just going to tweak it just a little bit and just reduce this cut a little bit. Okay, and that works for me a lot better. So I took this from about a 4 dB cut to a 2.3 dB cut, and then I just tweaked the frequency of this boost here. I took it up a little bit higher. I want to catch a little bit more of the bite of the synths. So I just tweaked it a little bit. I moved it up in the frequency spectrum. It was around 2,300 hertz. I moved it up to about 2,700, and I also made it a bit wider. So I took the Q from about 1.1, I took it to 0.8. So there you have it, guys. Everything we've done so far makes the track sound a lot more focused, a lot cleaner, and a lot more balanced.